While my brother was handed the keys to a brand new luxury car for his birthday, I opened an envelope demanding I start making payments on a loan I never agreed to. My parents said it was only fair. I walked away, now they're frantic, claiming I misunderstood everything. Hey Reddit, I'm Ellis, 38M, and for most of my life, I thought I had a relatively normal family. Not perfect by any means, what family is, but normal enough that I never questioned whether the way things were handled was right or fair. I'm not the type to air personal drama online, but I genuinely don't know how else to process what's happened over the past couple of weeks. A few friends suggested I write it all down just to make sense of it, and honestly, this subreddit seemed like the only place where people might get it. To really explain what happened, I need to start with a bit of background. It's not just about what went down recently, it's about patterns. It's about the slow buildup of things that didn't seem like much at the time, but now feel like warning signs I ignored for too long. I grew up in a small town just outside Richmond, Virginia. Pretty quiet place. The kind of neighborhood where lawns were always neatly trimmed and people waved to each other but didn't really know one another. My parents, Diane and Marcus, have lived in the same two-story colonial since before I was born. Solidly middle class, though they always liked to present themselves as a bit more well-off than they really were. Everything had to be just so, the clothes, the furniture, even the cars had to make an impression. It was always about how things looked from the outside. I'm the oldest of two. My younger brother, Nolan, 33M, came along 5 years after me. From the very beginning, he was the loud one, the charming one, the kid who could break something and somehow convince everyone it wasn't really his fault. I wasn't jealous at first, just observant. I noticed how our parents treated us differently, though they'd never admit it. I was the quiet kid, the rule follower. I got decent grades, kept to myself, never made trouble. When I brought home a B+, Mom would ask why it wasn't an A. If Nolan brought home a C, it was, well, math is hard for him. If I forgot to take out the trash, it was a lecture. If Nolan forgot, he's under a lot of pressure right now. It wasn't just school. It was everything. I got my first job at 16 bagging groceries to save up for a used car. Nolan got a car handed to him when he turned 17. Nothing flashy, just an old Toyota, but the principle stung. I'd spent over a year saving for mine, skipping movies with friends, eating cheap lunches, doing double shifts on weekends. He didn't even have to ask. It just appeared in the driveway one morning with a bow on it and a set of keys waiting on the kitchen counter. Still, I didn't complain. That was kind of my role in the family, not the golden child, not the problem child. Just the stable one, the one who didn't rock the boat. I figured if I kept my head down, did the responsible thing, maybe eventually I'd earn the same kind of affection or trust or attention that Nolan seemed to receive by default. Fast forward to adulthood. I put myself through college, state school, nothing fancy, working part-time, and picking up small scholarships. It took me a little longer than 4 years because I had to pause a semester to save up again, but I did it. Got a degree in data analysis, landed a stable job, and eventually moved into a small apartment a couple hours away from my parents. I've been living fairly independently since then. Not flashy, but solid. I've got a decent savings account, no debt, and a reliable, albeit aging, car that I still maintain myself. Nolan, on the other hand, has always had a knack for almost succeeding. He's one of those people who gets a new job every year or two, sales, marketing, one stint in real estate that ended when the firm shut down. Each time something didn't work out, there was a new excuse: bad timing, a toxic manager, or the market's just rough right now. And each time, Mom and Dad were there to cushion the fall, loaning him money, letting him move back in, helping him reset. I want to be clear, I don't hate my brother. He's never been cruel or deliberately malicious, but he's used to things being easy for him. And when they aren't, someone usually steps in to make them easy again. He knows how to work a room, how to make people feel like they're doing him a favor that they'll be thanked for later, even if that later never comes. Which brings us to the present. 2 weeks ago, I got a call from my mom. She wanted to invite me to Nolan's birthday dinner, his 33rd. She said it was going to be a small gathering, just family, and that it would mean a lot to Nolan if I showed up. We hadn't all been together in a while, so I figured, why not? Maybe it'd be a chance to reconnect. Maybe things had changed. I didn't have any reason to believe it'd be anything other than an awkward, quiet dinner where we ate too much and made small talk about work and the weather. I cleared my Saturday, picked out a button-down shirt, and left early to make the tower drive. The moment I pulled into the driveway, though, something fell off. There were balloons tied to the mailbox. streamers on the front porch. I could hear music playing from inside, not blaring, but louder than I expected for what was supposed to be a low-key dinner. When I stepped through the door, I realized immediately I'd been misled. There were at least 20 people there, family, friends, Nolan's girlfriend, her parents, even a couple of people I vaguely remembered from high school who had no real connection to our family anymore. Nolan was, of course, in the center of it all, laughing, telling a story about some wild meeting he'd had at his new job, a group of people hanging on to his every word. My mom spotted me and came over with a wide smile. "There you are. We weren't sure you'd make it." I smiled politely and handed her the small, wrapped box I'd brought. Inside was an old hardcover book Nolan used to read as a teenager. A collector's edition I'd hunted down online a few months earlier when I remembered him mentioning it once during a rare phone call. It wasn't much, but it was meaningful. Or so I thought. She took it with a quick, "Oh, how nice," before placing it on a table already overflowing with bags and boxes. Nobody else seemed to notice I'd arrived. Dinner was more formal than I expected, fancy place settings, a catered meal instead of homemade food, place cards even. I was seated next to a couple I didn't know, far from my parents and Nolan. The food was fine, but the conversation was mostly about Nolan, his new job, how proud everyone was, how things were finally coming together for him. After dessert, my dad stood up and tapped his glass. "Everyone, if I could have your attention, we have one more surprise for the birthday boy." We were ushered outside, where Nolan's girlfriend stood with her phone out, already recording. Sitting in the driveway, tucked beneath a large red bell, was a sleek, brand-new black Audi. Everyone clapped. Someone actually whistled. Nolan stood there with this perfect expression of shocked delight, like he had no idea what was happening. "Is this for real?" he said, laughing as he turned to our parents. "It's all yours," my dad said, beaming. "You've worked hard. We wanted to do something special." People started taking photos. Nolan hopped in the driver's seat and revved the engine. I stood off to the side, arms crossed, saying nothing. Not because I was jealous. I'd stopped expecting anything a long time ago, but because I knew what this was. A performance. Eventually, my mom came over and touched my arm. "Don't think we forgot about you," she said, her voice warm but slightly rehearsed. "Come back inside. We have something for you too." She smiled like she had just handed Nolan the keys to a kingdom and now had a trinket left for the loyal servant. I followed her back inside, expecting maybe a card or something symbolic. I wasn't upset, not exactly. I'd stopped holding out for grand gestures from them years ago. Still, I was curious. Something in her tone had a strange weight to it. Not warmth, exactly. More like obligation. Like this was a box she needed to check. We walked through the now half-empty dining room. Most guests had wandered off into other parts of the house or back to their cars, chatting and laughing in little groups. The remnants of dinner were still on the table, untouched. I noticed my book sitting where it had been left earlier, still unopened, still wrapped. I wondered if Nolan even knew it was from me. In the kitchen, my dad was standing near the counter with a small stack of envelopes in his hand. He gave me a look that I can only describe as performative seriousness, like a teacher about to deliver a lecture he'd rehearsed. "Here," he said, handing me one of the envelopes. "We thought it was time to bring you in on this." I opened it, assuming it was a card or maybe some kind of family memento. Instead, it was paperwork. A stack of neatly printed pages, clipped together. My eyes scanned the first few lines. Loan transfer agreement payment schedule total principal, $17,800 monthly installments, $410 interest, 5.3% term, 48 months. I blinked, trying to make sense of it. "What is this?" My mother stepped in quickly. "It's the loan we co-signed on a few years ago for the down payment on Nolan's first condo. Remember? The one that didn't work out." I stared at her. "No, I never co-signed anything." Dad gave a dismissive wave. No, not you. We did. But the bank said we could transfer the balance to a third party as long as that person agreed in writing. Since you're in a better financial position right now, and Nolan's still getting back on his feet, we figured this would even things out. Even things out. I stood there, not speaking, just staring at the papers. My brain tried to find a thread, a reason, anything that would make this make sense. But there wasn't one. "You're transferring his debt to me?" Mom gave a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We're not asking you to pay all of it. We just think it's fair that you contribute. We helped him with the car. It's only right that you pitch in with something meaningful." Meaningful. My voice was quiet, but it carried. Dad nodded. "You've always been the responsible one. You can handle this. Think of it as balancing the scales. There was something deeply rehearsed in the way they spoke, like they'd talked through these lines multiple times, practicing how to justify it. I shook my head slowly. You bought him a brand new car, and you want me to pay off his old condo loan. How is that balanced? It's not just about the money, Mom said quickly. It's about what's fair. You moved out early. You haven't needed as much help from us over the years. Nolan's had a rougher path. That was always the line. Nolan was trying. Nolan was figuring things out. Nolan just needed a little help. I looked down at the paperwork again. They'd already filled in my name at the top. Did you sign my name on anything? Dad looked offended. Of course not. We'd never do that. This is just a draft. Once you sign, it becomes official. I don't know how long I stood there. It felt like the room got quieter, even though I could still hear faint music and conversation coming from the other side of the house. I noticed little things, the hum of the refrigerator, the clink of someone setting down a glass in the other room. It all felt very far away. I placed the envelope back on the counter. I'm not signing this. There was a silence. Not dramatic, just cold. Dad gave a tight, patient nod, like he'd expected resistance. Just take a few days to think about it. We're not asking for a decision tonight. Mom added, it's not about punishment, Ellis. It's just about family. That line hit harder than I expected. I think that was the moment I realized they didn't see me as a person. Not really. I was a role. The responsible one. The helper. The one who didn't cause problems. And they were right, in a way. I didn't cause problems. I solved them. I fixed things. I kept things smooth. And that made me useful. I left not long after that. No big goodbye. No confrontation. I just slipped out, got in my car, and drove the 2 hours home in silence. No music. No podcast. Just my own thoughts, swirling around in my head like smoke I couldn't clear. Over the next few days, the texts started rolling in. First from Mom. Ellis, don't make this into a big deal. Just talk to us. Then Dad. We're only trying to be fair to both of you. Then Nolan. Dude, come on. I didn't ask them to do that. It's not even that much money. You make more than me anyway. That one stuck with me. Not even that much money. To Nolan, money was always abstract. A thing that either showed up or disappeared. A thing that other people worried about. He never had to tighten his belt to make rent. He never had to delay getting new tires because he needed groceries first. But to me, money was time. Time spent working, time spent worrying, time spent trading comfort for security. A week passed. I didn't reply to any of them. I needed space. I needed to think. And then, 2 days ago, another envelope arrived in the mail. My name. My address. No return address. Inside, another copy of the loan paperwork. And a note. Handwritten. From my mother. We really hope you'll do the right thing. No love. No sincerely. Just that. Then, the second envelope had arrived. This time mailed directly to me. Same paperwork. Same terms. And a short note from my mother with just 6 words. We really hope you'll do the right thing. It sat on my desk for 3 days, unopened after that first glance. I didn't need to read it again. I kept it there not because I was undecided, but because I wanted to sit with it, to feel it, to give myself time to stop doing what I had always done, which was smooth things over and move on. You see, growing up in a house like mine, you learn how to be quiet in the right ways. You learn how to listen for tone more than words. How to shrink yourself to fit the expectations that are already drawn out for you. I learned early that my parents only responded to 2 things, appearance and authority. Not kindness, not logic, just control and the illusion of being in control. So I decided, quietly, that if they wanted me involved in their family matters, really involved, they would get exactly what they asked for, just not in the way they expected. I didn't storm into their house, shouting about injustice. That's not how they would hear me. I didn't post about it online or call extended family in protest. None of that would land. It would just feed the story they'd already written about me being difficult or emotional. Instead, I did something they never expected. I opened a folder. I have this small file cabinet in my bedroom closet, one of those plastic ones with a creaky bottom drawer where I've kept important documents since I was 24. Tax returns, employment contracts, old lease agreements. I dug through it until I found exactly what I was looking for, a faded manila folder labeled simply, House, 2018. Inside was a copy of the loan agreement my parents had taken out to help Nolan with the down payment on that first condo. See, back when they were putting that deal together, I had been visiting for a long weekend. Dad had gone on and on about how proud he was of Nolan, and I guess I was supposed to offer congratulations. But I remember clearly how smug Nolan was that day. How, over lunch, he casually dropped that their credit wasn't quite enough on its own, and they were considering pulling in a third signature to strengthen the application. At the time, I was suspicious, so I asked a few questions, carefully. I remember Dad brushing me off, saying it was taken care of. But I'm methodical, and something didn't sit right with me. So I snapped a photo of the front page of their loan packet that was lying out on the counter while they were upstairs. Not to be sneaky, just cautious. And now, in 2025, here I was staring at that exact photo, now printed and tucked neatly into my records. There were only two names listed on the original document: Marcus Caldwell and Diane Caldwell. Not a third name. Not mine. They hadn't brought me in then. Not legally. Not officially. Which meant the new documents they'd sent me were nothing more than a request. An audacious one, but a powerless one. And that gave me room to move. The first thing I did was contact an attorney. A local woman named Corinne who'd helped me when I was negotiating my last apartment lease. She's sharp and methodical, and best of all, not afraid to call things what they are. I sent her copies of the paperwork they had mailed me. Both the original loan documents from 2018 and the new transfer agreement with my name on it. She responded within a day. "You're not legally liable for anything here. If you sign that transfer form, then you'll be on the hook, but right now, you owe nothing. This is them trying to pressure you into assuming debt that isn't yours. And frankly, it's a bit reckless on their part." I asked her what would happen if I ignored it completely. She said, "Nothing legally, but I have a feeling they won't leave it alone." She was right. By the end of the week, I had 3 missed calls from my father, 2 voicemails from my mother, each sounding more brittle than the last. One of them even said, "We didn't expect this to be controversial. We're just trying to do what's best for the family." That phrase again, best for the family. On Saturday, Nolan called. I didn't answer. He sent a message, "Bro, they're really upset. I told them this was a bad idea, but they're freaking out now. Can you just call them?" I didn't reply. I was done being the one who smoothed things over. Instead, I went back to Corinne and asked, "What's the most polite legal way to tell them to back off, permanently?" She smiled and said, "Leave that to me." What followed was a carefully worded letter sent to both my parents and Nolan via certified mail. It was firm, not aggressive. It stated plainly that I was not, nor had I ever been, a party to the loan in question. That any attempts to pressure, coerce, or guilt me into assuming financial responsibility for another adult's debt would be considered harassment. That no further communication on the matter would be welcome. I signed it. So did Corinne. 3 days later, I received a response. Not from my parents. Not from Nolan. From an email address I didn't recognize. It belonged to my father's accountant. Apparently, they had already begun listing me as the anticipated secondary party on some of their records. They were preparing to treat the debt as mine, even before I had agreed. The accountant, after receiving Corinne's letter, had stopped all changes and flagged the issue as a liability concern. I thanked her and saved the correspondence. By now, you might be wondering, was that the revenge? Sending a lawyerly letter? Holding my ground? No, that was just the line in the sand. The real part came after. And here's the part that's taken me time to plan. I've been building a case, not for court, but for clarity. Over the years, my parents have borrowed and accepted various financial favors from me. Small things. Can you help cover the plumber this month? Your father's truck needs new tires, but we're between paychecks. Can we borrow until Friday? I always said yes. I never wrote anything down. That's on me. But I've been combing through my old bank statements. Every transfer, every withdrawal, every email confirming a digital payment, every Venmo record. I'm putting it all into a spreadsheet, neatly categorized. Labeled, Unreturned Family Loans, 2013 to 2023. So far, the total is over $9,200. This isn't about getting the money back. I know I won't. That ship sailed years ago. It's about showing them, concretely, how much I've already given. Without complaint. Without demand. While they lavished praise, attention, and thousands of dollars on a son who never stayed still long enough to earn any of it. When it's ready, I'm going to send it to them. With a message that says, I've never asked to be repaid. I'm not asking now. But I will not give one more cent, or one more hour, towards someone else's idea of fairness. This is what I've already given. If that's not enough, then I wish you well. But you'll be doing it without me. I haven't sent it yet. Because part of me wonders, how far will they go? Because this time, I'm not giving in. Not calling. Not defending. And right now, they're starting to panic. They haven't heard from me in nearly a month. And for once, the silence is loud on their end. Let me know if you want to hear what happened when they finally showed up at my door. Unannounced. Because they did. And they weren't there to apologize. It was a Thursday morning when they showed up. I was working from home, taking a quiet coffee break on my small apartment balcony when I saw their car pull into the parking lot. My father's dark gray sedan, too large for city spaces, idled for a moment before settling into the visitor slot right across from my building. They didn't call ahead. They didn't text. They just arrived. I stayed where I was for a moment, watching them from the third-floor balcony like an observer, not a participant. My mother stepped out first. Neat, composed, carrying something tucked under her arm, what looked like a folder. My father followed more slowly, scanning the building like he wasn't entirely sure which door to approach. When they reached the front door of the complex, I stood up, quietly stepped inside, and closed the sliding glass door behind me. I walked calmly to the front door and waited until I heard the knock. I opened it just enough to step into the frame, not wide enough to invite them in. My mother's face softened into what she probably thought was warmth. Ellis. We thought it was time we talked face to face. My father stood behind her, hands in his coat pockets, wearing a neutral expression that didn't quite reach his eyes. I'm not sure there's much left to say, I said. Mom gave a small nod. Well, we disagree. There's been a lot of misunderstanding, and I think it's gone far enough. This situation with the loan, with Nolan, it's become unnecessarily dramatic. You made it dramatic, I replied, by trying to hand me something I never agreed to. She didn't respond to that. Instead, she held out the folder. This is everything. We wanted to be transparent. You can look through it, and you'll see we weren't trying to trap you. We just thought you'd want to contribute, to be part of a solution. I didn't take the folder. You already tried to register me as a secondary party through your accountant. That caught my father off guard. His eyebrows drew down. How do you? I know because she stopped it and flagged the behavior. She was more professional than either of you. They were both quiet for a moment. Finally, Dad said, you've always been better with numbers than us. We thought you'd understand that it was the most efficient way to make things work for everyone. It was such a flat, lifeless excuse. No apology. No real ownership. Just efficiency. My mother tried again, gentler this time. Ellis, we weren't trying to hurt you. We just didn't think it would upset you like this. I looked at her carefully. That's because you didn't think of me at all. You saw me as a way out. You've spent years bending everything to keep Nolan from falling, but you never stopped to ask what it was costing the rest of us. What it was costing me. Dad shifted. Your brother has different strengths. I'm not here to compare resumes, I cut in. But I am done pretending this is balanced. Or fair. Or healthy. They both stood there, silent now. Not angry. Just thrown off balance. I could tell they came expecting a confrontation they could contain, a conversation they could steer back to guilt, or family duty, or shared sacrifice. But I wasn't giving them that. Instead, I stepped inside for a moment and returned with a thin manila envelope. I made you something too, I said, handing it to my mother. She took it with hesitation. It's not a contract, I added. It's just a list. Every time I loaned you money, covered a shortfall, or paid for something you promised to reimburse and never did. It's not exhaustive, some things I never recorded. But what's there is accurate. My father opened the envelope and began reading silently. My mother looked down, then up. You kept track. I did. Quietly. Like you taught me. Her face changed then. A shift I can't quite describe. Not shame, exactly. Not regret. But a flicker of discomfort, like being held under a light for the first time. I'm not asking for the money back, I said. But I am done giving. No more loans. No more transfers. No more smoothing things over. From now on, I'm not available to fix the messes other people make. Not financially. Not emotionally. And what does that mean for us? Dad asked. His tone was low. Not challenging, just flat. It means you are responsible for your choices. You can help Nolan however you want. You can sign whatever papers you want. But I won't be involved. I won't be paying for mistakes I didn't make. For the first time in a long while, they didn't have an answer. They stood there for a few moments longer, then turned back to the car without another word. No dramatics. No apology. Just retreat. And I watched them go, not with satisfaction, but with clarity. It's been 3 months since that day. I haven't heard from either of them directly. Nolan texted me once, a vague message that said, "Heard you talk to mom and dad. Guess we're not cool anymore." I didn't reply. Instead, I've spent those months focusing on my own life. I finally took the trip I'd been putting off for years. I started volunteering at a community mentorship group. I reconnected with friends I hadn't made time for because I was always trying to be available for my family. And more than anything, I started feeling lighter. Not angry, not cold, just free. The thing about boundaries is that at first, they feel like walls. Harsh, isolating, even selfish. But over time, you realize they're not walls at all. They're fences with gates. Gates you control. Gates you can open if someone proves they've earned your trust again. My parents haven't come to the gate. And that's okay. For the first time in my life, I'm not waiting on them to change. I've changed. And that's enough.